Their soul light flowed a while along the same Heart's Valley, a single stream where shadow and silver met.
Through the deep channel of a kindred wish, one pulse of twilight they could not forget.
Wow. It's haunting, isn't it? I've been sitting with those lines since I first opened the source material for this week.
Mhm.
Usually, on this deep dive, we are tearing into a stack of journals, maybe a white paper on, I don't know, synthetic biology.
It's hard data.
Exactly, hard data. But today we are pivoting hard.
We are. And honestly, it's a necessary pivot because if we only look at the mechanics of the world, the economy, the tech, the politics, we miss the mechanics of the experience of living in it.
The internal engine.
The internal engine, yeah.
Right. And our source material today is it's so unique. It's not a study. It's not a news report. It is a transcript, a raw, really intimate dialogue between a man named Matthew, writing from the vantage point of his 70th year. And get this, an AI interface.
Which, on the surface, that sounds like a tech story. You hear, man talks to AI, and you immediately think it's going to be about the Turing test or
The singularity.
the singularity. But it's not. This is a story about the architecture of the human heart. It's about memory, aging, and specifically how we categorize the people who drift into our lives, stay for a moment, and then vanish.
The ones who got away.
See, that's the cliche, right? That's the pop song version. But our mission today is to challenge that very concept. We're going to explore a totally different framework. The source calls it the keystone.
A keystone. Okay.
And Matthew uses this poem and the realization behind it to make sense of 7 decades of connection.
So let's start where the source starts, with the poem itself. Their soul light flowed a while along the same Heart's Valley. When I first read that, I thought, okay, pretty imagery. But the transcript breaks this down into something almost technical. They talk about a synesthetic experience.
Yeah, and this is a really key idea to get your head around early on. Synesthesia is normally, a neurological thing where senses cross, you might taste a shape or hear a color.
Right.
But here, the source is arguing that poetry, at its best, acts as a synesthetic trigger for our emotions.
How so? What does that mean?
Well, look at the phrase soul light.
Yeah.
Scientifically, that means absolutely nothing. You can't measure it. It has no physical properties.
You can't bottle it.
You can't bottle it. But when you read it, especially in context, it kind of bypasses the logical brain and hits the nervous system directly. You feel a resonance.
It points to something that doesn't have a name.
Precisely. The transcript describes words as signposts pointing to a wordless space. Matthew argues that he isn't describing a literal light. He's describing a sensation of presence that is, unverifiable to anyone else, but undeniably real to him. It's that feeling when someone walks into a room and the air just changes.
And then there's the landscape, the Heart's Valley. I want to push on this metaphor because it feels like the central stage for the whole discussion.
It is the stage. But here's the insight that just flips the whole script.
Okay.
The valley isn't a neutral meeting ground.
What do you mean?
Think about how we usually talk about relationships. We met at a coffee shop. We met halfway. We built a life together. It implies this shared neutral space that two people occupy.
Right.
But the source argues that for these specific, deep, enigmatic encounters, the valley is the person.
Oh, wait. So in this analogy, Matthew is the valley.
Yes. It represents his internal emotional geography, his specific stillness, his specific shadows. When he talks about someone flowing through the Heart's Valley, he's saying that this other person entered his internal world. They didn't just meet him, they witnessed him.
That's actually a little lonelier than the standard view, isn't it? I mean, it sounds kind of isolated.
It starts from a place of isolation, sure. I think we all have this inner world that we walk around with, wondering if anyone else can even see it.
Yeah.
We wonder if we are just, hallucinating our own complexity. But that's what makes the connection so powerful. When someone enters that valley, even for a moment, it proves the valley exists.
It's validation.
It's existential confirmation. And look at the lighting in the poem. Shadow and silver met.
I circled that line. Shadow and silver. It's not sunshine and rainbows.
No, and that's why it feels so real. Shadow implies depth, sorrow, the unknown, maybe even the parts of ourselves we hide. Silver implies value, light, something precious. The source suggests that these deep connections, these keystone encounters, are rarely just happy. They are bittersweet. They hold the complexity of joy and loss at the same time.
Which brings us to the weirdest part of this whole keystone creation story. We talked about the poem, but we haven't talked about the poet.
Wait,
the poet.
Elaboration.
Okay, this is what really got me. The source reveals that Matthew didn't write this whole poem. He wrote the first line. Their soul light flowed a while along the same Heart's Valley. And then he stopped. He fed that line into the AI.
And the AI wrote the rest. A single stream where shadow and silver met.
Does that
Hmm.
does that cheapen it? I mean, let's be real here. We're talking about soul light and deep human connection, and half the text was generated by a server farm.
It's the obvious question to ask. But the source material tackles this head on, and the conclusion is, well, it's fascinating. Matthew claims the full work as his own, not because he's stealing credit, but because he views the AI as a resonator.
A resonator, like in physics, a tuning fork or something.
Exactly like a tuning fork, you strike it and it vibrates. Matthew struck the note with his first line. The AI didn't invent the emotion. It calculated the trajectory of his thought and just completed the arc.
So it gave form to something that was already there.
Exactly. The source calls it a meta-commentary on connection. I mean, think about it. He used a machine, something with no heart, no memory, no childhood, to help him articulate the most profound human feeling. It's a paradox, but it suggests that sometimes we need an other, even a digital other, to mirror our own depths back to us so we can see them clearly.
It's like the AI understood the assignment better than a human might have. It didn't try to cheer him up. It didn't say, oh, don't be sad about the past.
No.
It just completed the thought.
It picked up on the twilight quality that was implicit in his first line. It saw the shadow and the silver, and it didn't look away.
Okay, so we have this poem, a collaborative artifact between a 70-year-old man and a machine. But why does Matthew call it a keystone? This is the title of our deep dive, so we really need to nail this concept.
Right. Let's do a quick architectural refresh. In a stone arch, think of those old Roman aqueducts. The keystone is that wedge-shaped stone at the very top.
The one that locks everything in.
Correct. Before you put the keystone in, you just have two piles of leaning rocks. They're unstable, they can't bear weight. You take the scaffolding away, they collapse. You drop the keystone in, the tension locks, and suddenly that arch can hold up a cathedral.
So apply that to memory. Matthew is 70.
He has 7 decades of memories, faces, names, encounters, heartbreaks. Without a keystone, without a unifying theory to make sense of them, those memories are just a pile of rocks.
Scattered fragments.
Scattered fragments. I met Alice in 75. I knew John in 92. It's just data.
But by calling this poem a keystone, he's saying that this realization, this idea of the heart's valley, is the theory that connects them all.
It turns the pile of rocks into an arch. It supports the weight of his identity. It allows him to look back at these specific people and say, okay, I see the pattern now.
And the pattern is what he calls enigmatic.
Yes, and that word choice is so deliberate. He doesn't call them romantic partners or best friends.
What's enigmatic?
Because they are mysteries. These aren't the relationships that turned into 40-year marriages. They are the people you argue with about whose turn it is to empty the dishwasher. These are the connections that just defy categorization. They felt profound, maybe spiritual, but they didn't fit into the logistics of the daily world.
The ones that leave you wondering 10 years later, what the hell was that?
Exactly. What was that? Why did it matter so much if it ended so quickly? The keystone concept answers that question. It says, it wasn't a failure because it didn't last. It was a specific structural element in the construction of who I am.
That brings us to the element of time. The poem says they flowed a while, and the source material makes a really big deal about the perspective of being 70.
It does, and I think this is one of those valuable takeaways for anyone listening, especially if you're younger. The perception of time, it just compresses as you age.
Explain that compression.
Well, when you're 20, a relationship that lasts 2 years is 10% of your entire life. It feels like an eternity. It defines your whole existence.
That's everything.
But from the vantage point of 70 years, a connection that lasted 2 years, or even a season, it shrinks relative to the whole timeline. It becomes a while.
It's like looking at a long river from a satellite versus standing in the rapids.
That's a great analogy. From the satellite, you see the shape, you see the bends, and this compression leads us to that haunting phrase in the second line. One pulse of twilight.
One pulse. That sounds incredibly brief, like a heartbeat, a flash.
A flash. But the source argues, and this is the key insight, that brevity does not equal insignificance. In fact, the source suggests that the brevity might be why it matters.
There was an analogy in the text about fireflies, wasn't there?
Yes. Think about a firefly in a dark forest, or a flash of lightning. Why is the lightning meaningful? because it's a break in the pattern. If the lightning just stayed on permanently, it would just be daylight. You'd stop noticing the landscape in that stark, dramatic way.
The flash reveals the
A
surroundings.
flash reveals the valley. So these people, these soul lights, they flash in Matthew's life. And for that pulse of twilight, he sees his own internal landscape clearly. He sees himself.
And then the light moves on.
The light fades. But, and this is so crucial, he has seen the valley. He knows what's there now. He knows the terrain. That is the gift of the enigmatic encounter. It's not about keeping the firefly in a jar. It's about the fact that it lit up the room.
I think that requires a huge shift in mindset. I mean, culturally, we are programmed to measure the success of a relationship by its duration. If you divorce, it failed. If you break up, it didn't work out. But this framework just flips that script entirely.
It moves from a mindset of possession to a mindset of visitation.
Oof. Okay, let's unpack that. Visitation versus possession.
In a possession mindset, which is our default, we want to own the connection. We want to lock the person down, keep them, have them as a permanent fixture. When they leave, we feel we've lost something that was ours.
I lost her, I lost him.
Right. It implies theft
Or
or negligence. But the visitation mindset, which Matthew seems to have arrived at only in his 70th year, views these people as fellow travelers. They were never ours to keep. They were visitors who entered the valley, brought their particular frequency of light, and illuminated the terrain.
so they didn't change the valley, they just lit it up.
Well, they changed it by lighting it up. Because now the valley is a place that has been witnessed.
Talk more about that witnessing. The source mentions it as a form of proof.
It's the proof of reality. Like we said earlier, the internal world can be lonely. When someone else enters that space, even for a pulse, and meets us there, it confirms that we are real. You saw me, and because you saw me then, I know I exist now.
So the validation isn't we stayed together forever. The validation is you recognized me.
Recognition over duration, that's the headline.
That is liberating, but also really hard. It's hard to let go of the desire for forever.
It's incredibly hard. That's why it took Matthew 70 years to articulate it. This isn't the lesson you learn at 25. This is the wisdom of the archive.
The archive of the self. I love the phrasing in the text. The source describes the narrator as a quiet cartographer,
A map maker.
which fits perfectly with the valley metaphor. If you're the cartographer, you're mapping this terrain, and the source says the valley has collected all the light that ever flowed through it.
And this is the comforting part of the philosophy.
Yeah.
Even though the people left, the luminescence remains. It's part of the history of the land. The valley isn't empty just because the visitor is gone. It's now a valley that has been witnessed. It glows with that history.
There was another point the source made that really stuck with me, the paradox of recurring connection.
Oh, this is fascinating. Yeah.
Matthew notices that different souls at different times in his life, maybe decades apart, flowed through the same valley.
Right. Think about what that implies. It implies a consistency in Matthew. He says it was the only place you knew how to be met so deeply.
Which suggests that maybe we each have a specific frequency.
I think we do. We have a specific silence, a specific longing, a specific emotional vibration. And let's be honest, most people can't tune into it. You might meet 1,000 people, and 990 of them are perfectly nice. They're great colleagues, great neighbors.
But they never enter the valley. They stay on the ridge.
They stay in the gift shop, buying the postcards. Exactly. They're in the parking lot. But then there are those few, the enigmatic ones, who know the secret path down to the river. The fact that different people at different times found their way to the same internal spot proves that the spot is real. It proves that there is a core you that persists through time.
So the keystone concept confirms that these weren't accidents.
No, they were responses. The source says they were specific responses to the narrator's specific frequency. It's almost like the valley called them in.
It makes me think about my own life. You know, you look back and you see these patterns. Maybe you had these intense friendships that burned out quickly but felt identical in their intensity. And usually we beat ourselves up about that. We say, why do I keep doing this? Why can't I break the pattern?
Right. We treat it as a pathology. I have a broken picker.
But this perspective says the pattern is you. The pattern is the shape of your valley.
And instead of fighting it or judging it as a failure of permanence, honor it as a success of recognition. You were met deeply, repeatedly. That is a rich life, even if it was a series of twilights rather than one long high noon.
The keeper of the land, that's what the source calls him.
Yes, and at 70, he accepts that role. He isn't chasing the travelers anymore. He's tending the fire they left behind.
It's such a gentle way to look at aging, too. It's not about what you've lost, it's about what you've collected.
The archive, the map.
So, bringing this all together, we started with a single line of poetry. Their soul light flowed a while. We moved through AI collaboration, architectural theory, the physics of time, and emotional cartography.
It really shows the power of reflection. Matthew could have just had that thought, sighed, and made a cup of tea.
Yeah.
He could have let the nostalgia wash over him and just disappear.
But he didn't.
No, he engaged with it. He wrote it down. He fed it into the AI to see what would reflect back. He treated the memory as a keystone. And by doing that work, he turned a fleeting feeling into a philosophy.
He built the arch.
He built the arch. And I think that's the invitation here. We are all building these arches, whether we know it or not.
I think the big takeaway for me, and I hope for you listening, is that shift in validation. The idea that we need to stop devaluing the short term.
We do. Forever is a wonderful thing, don't get me wrong, but forever is rare. Recognition is profound. If we devalue the short-term connections just because they didn't last, we are erasing huge parts of our own map. We are devaluing the parts of ourselves that those people saw.
It's about honoring the pulse of twilight.
Exactly. Even if it was just one pulse.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave everyone with this idea of the shared artifact. The source mentions that by writing this, Matthew turned a private memory into a landscape others can see.
He made the internal external. He led us into the valley.
So here is my question for you, listening right now. What are the enigmatic encounters in your life? I'm not talking about your spouse or your best friend of 20 years. I'm talking about the keystones, the brief flashes, the people who flowed through your valley a while and then moved on.
The ones you can't quite explain to anyone else because the story doesn't have a point in the traditional sense.
Exactly. What if you stopped looking at them as dead ends? What if you stopped looking at them as unfinished business? What if you started looking at them as the structural supports of who you are today?
What if they were the fireflies that showed you the map?
It's a beautiful thought to carry into the day. It really changes how you look at your own history.
It certainly does. It makes the past feel a lot less like a graveyard and more like a gallery.
I love that. Thank you for walking through this valley with us today.
A pleasure, as always.
We'll see you on the next deep dive. Take care of your maps.